Alright guys, Scrappy again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. And after a weekend of absolute CDL slammage, it is no secret that many of the teams in the league right now will absolutely require changes in the very near future if they want to be at all competitive this season. As a result, lots of speculation as to whether those changes might go down before Major 1, because if you're terrible anyway, why wait any longer to make a change, especially when there can only be a set few players that might improve some of these teams and challenges. Clayster responding to the idea that Ravens have serious issues that they need to solve in the near future. Could many teams make changes as soon as this upcoming week? Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to dive into today, of course. These are some of the names that really should be in consideration for roster changes. The problem being that, especially a team like the Ravens, they're having visa issues with Real. Good luck getting it sorted with some of the UK guys getting out there. Nasty should 100% be in the league. That's not how it is, unfortunately, at the moment. Hopefully, a team will decide, you know what, Nasty is a guy we want to try and pursue. They could try and get him and maybe figure out the visa stuff at some point. But look, Nasty isn't going to be able to go and play for those guys this upcoming weekend. It is what it is. But this team of Hicksy, Bants, Beans, and Nasty still continues to dominate the European Challenger side, as is absolutely no surprise to anybody. They won the Rotation Cup #2 last night, and also are now signed to Team War with Marky B as their coach, so that's kind of cool. Of course, we'll see how they got on in Boston, and hopefully, if they fry at Boston or Nasty shows out that, yeah, indeed, he is absolutely killing it in challenges, maybe someone will take a note, because they certainly should. But a very interesting series to close out last night, actually, between Miami and Boston. On paper, it was a really interesting game, and it actually turned out to be that way. Went down to a Game 4, very competitive series. Vikul and the Heretics guys won Game 1. I will say that the hardpoint stuff for Boston is always going to be a bit of a problem because, well, their SMG duo, while very talented, does have its flaws. I think it's no secret that the communication of Snoopy and Capsidal is probably not the best you're going to find of an SMG duo in the league. And I think that, you know, they can learn that, they can improve on that. But there is an argument that over time there might need to be consideration for some more experience in that SMG role. Sure, they've got a lot of experience in Slasher and Priestahh, but because those aren't the hyper-aggressive players, I have questions about this Boston team. I think many people have questions about this Boston team, but I did predict them to win this series, and that's what they did. Thanks really to a Snoopy masterclass, right? I mean, this guy is very talented, and I raised the question for you guys the other day, do we just have a relatively weak rookie class this year? Because the rookies, by the series records this season, are getting slammed pretty much, compared to what we've had the last few years of every year a big-name rookie like a Scrappy, a Priestahh, a HyDra, a Shotzzy, a Simp, you know, Kenny, a Gunless, over the last several years coming into the scene. But, you know, this year we don't seem to really have that. I still think we have talented rookies, but they're just not on great teams. But Snoopy is definitely a talented player. So maybe it's not a fact of we don't have good rookies, it's more the fact that, you know, for various reasons, they happen to be on bad teams this year, probably because, you know, the top teams just locked in their rosters. Snoopy is very good, but again, you know, he's up and down. He's a variable, a volatile asset, really. When he's making plays like this, he's phenomenal to watch. This was especially the clip, I thought, really. So they eventually win the control Boston after taking the search and destroy, a search and destroy that arguably Miami will feel like they should have won. They then lost the control as well. I don't know how MettalZ doesn't kill Snoopy here, but Snoopy goes on a crazy spree, sits in this corner, gets another couple of kills as well. He ends up like 23-9 at this point, and well, that's enough to help Boston close out this map. So when Snoopy is on point, he's really on point, and is undoubtedly the star of the show, I think, of this Boston team when he's playing well. That's not always going to happen. He is going to be up and down. They really need a bit more consistency in the other players on their team, because if Snoopy goes off, they can probably beat lots of the teams. And, you know, Boston are one of the only teams I think are really capable of actually beating the top 4. We saw they did it to Toronto. I do think that of all the rosters, they are probably the one with the talent to actually execute an upset like that, but they are nonetheless 2-4. The victory against Heretics massively important, keeps their hopes alive of making winners bracket for the major. It's still on for them. I guess we should actually look at in a second who they play their last series against. I just looked it up quickly, and they play New York Subliners next weekend. So that is, well, they honestly have to prove that they are capable of beating 2 of the top 4 teams in Toronto and then New York if they want to make winners. So that is going to be a challenge, but it's still on. Snoopy drops a 1.26. Miami, tough series for them. I mean, look, it's probably expected that Lucky and MettalZ would not have the continuation to the start of the season that they had at the start of the season. I mean, they were frying everyone at the start of the year, but Boston came to play in this one, and, you know, Miami, Boston, maybe Surge, they're kind of the teams on that cusp of being the gatekeepers to the top 4. Kind of difficult to say who the 5th best team is. Maybe Los Angeles Grillers, but at least Boston have proven they can beat Toronto. LA Grillers haven't proven that quite yet. Still, I've got lots of questions mentioned about the Boston team, I do think they've got lots to work on. They might be a change or two away from really getting where they want to be, but I think that, you know, Snoopy and Slasher I don't think are going to be going anywhere. Slasher individually has not had the craziest stats so far, but I don't think that really takes into effect the impact that he will continue to have on players like Snoopy. There is going to be a learning curve there. They might need to consider a change at some point, depending on how things go at Major 1, but I think they won't make any moves until after Boston's Major, which is their home Major, but if it doesn't go to plan, they might have to consider something, but plenty of other teams will need to consider something. I mean, these were yesterday's results, and it was a similar trend really all weekend of teams that are worse than the teams they played getting slammed. The really embarrassing one, I would say, is probably Rocker versus Ravens. Sure, Ravens had a substitute, so it would have been embarrassing either way. Losing to Rocker is embarrassing enough, the way that Minnesota are playing at the moment, and then, you know, you can't lose to a team with a substitute. So either way, it was bad. Thieves also just got so, like, destroyed in the slang category. We'll have to look at some of the numbers here in a second. And even Arcetes, who didn't have a great weekend either, was talking about how he also has the same issue that TJ has with the overclocking controllers. So maybe that's the reason why Arcetes been having a hard time, because TJ played the series against Rocker with no overclocked on his controller thing. There was talk about it last night. Arcetes seems to imply the same thing's happening to him right now, but TJ still performed kind of well yesterday, so I don't think it's a guarantee that that's making every difference that we currently see. But this is the league standings. It shouldn't be a surprise to see how things are going at the top. Thankfully, next weekend's Ultra play Subliners and OpTic play FaZe. So we actually have the battle right at the top of the league finally occurring. It would also be very interesting if those other teams beat who they're expected to beat, and OpTic beat FaZe, and Toronto beat Subliners. We could have 4 teams all at 6-1, and then it'd be very interesting to see, okay, 4 teams at 6 series wins, 1 series loss. Who's the best 6-1 team going into the Major? That'd be quite fitting, I think. Then you have that kind of 5 through 8 block of Surge, Heretics, Gorillas, and Breach in some order or another, and then you have the worst 4 teams in Rocker, Ravens, Legion, and Thieves. And to be honest, now I look at this, I mean, Breach, as I say, they need to beat Subliners to get to 3 and 4. That'll be enough for the winners bracket start. But I don't know, is 2 in 5 enough with a map count? I mean, it kind of really puts into perspective how bad the bottom teams of the league are. That Breach are 2 in 4, and yet they're still 8th. Now, anyone who wins further down can potentially jump up. And Thieves are rock bottom of the league. But, you know, Breach are better than Rocker, Ravens, Legion, or Thieves. So even if they lose to Subliners, I guess it's possible, depending on the matchups down here, that they still make it through, because their map count is at least respectable. So, you know, maybe they don't need to beat Subliners, which is kind of wild, but just goes to show how bad some of these teams are further down. And that really is the point here, right? Zin has talked about it. Everyone's been talking about it. Ravens especially need to look to make a roster change, but I don't think it's just the Ravens at all. So the Flank guys talk about this last night, discussing the Ravens, even talking about Los Angeles Thieves and for good reason and what changes they might need to make.
Let's lay out how it is with this Carolina team, bro. Okay. They won 3 maps this year, and they've all been in 1 series. Like, I just think at this point, if you're this Carolina team, you got FaZe and Thieves coming up next. I think if any team should try and jump the line on roster changes, it should be this one, because whatever they have right now, even with Real getting his visa thing sorted, it's just not going to work. I think they really need to think about eventually making 1 change before Major 1, seeing if it works and make another, or making 2 before. Because I think a lot of teams are going to make changes, and they're clearly getting that last this tournament.
Ben, make sure you have some context here. Remember, Clay came on the show before. Even though they've lost 3-0 every single time, does not mean it hasn't been close. Remember? Make sure we're giving context.
Get GodRx out.
Dead.
Period.
That's what Clay said. That's not what I said.
He's not playing good. He hasn't been good this entire time. GodRx is the odd man out here. I don't think you get rid of Clay. And Real, obviously, he's dealing with shit. So, I mean, depends on how much stock you really put into him coming back and whether you even keep him. But, I mean,
I get rid of all of them except Gwen. Even when Real comes back.
GodRx needs to go, bro. Like, plain simple. Like, I can't sugarcoat it anymore. I can't, like, justify it. It's just, it is what it is. Like, his gameplay, his play style does not justify the statistics he's putting up and the results he's putting up for his team, period.
I don't see what waiting a week and a half does at this point. I think they just got to move on, figure it out, find someone out before Major 1. What do you have to lose?
Yeah, I mean, who would you pick? You probably try and grab somebody from Challengers, no, Ben? Just probably try and dip down there.
If they're trying to get an AR, yeah, you're talking like a Brack type situation. Like some ARs have playing really solid. Like Fel's been playing pretty good. I mean, he's got a lot of. Listen, I could see
Fellow could be a good fit.
A lot of connection with players on this team, and it seems like they're circling the wagon with some people. So, like,
yeah,
I could see it. We can sit here just name all the ARs and challengers. People are naming European ones in the chat. I just don't think they can bring in a Euro AR this quickly due to visa issues. Not possible.
I feel like we just need to redo Rostermania. Like just let the top 4 stay and then just completely like
we're doing a fancy draft like for everybody else.
No bullshit. Like let all the orgs have all free rules and just re-sign teams because like right now we're kind of screwed if they don't make big changes.
For you this, bro? Teams just gotta send us all each 100 gifted and they can respin.
Oh my god,
they might have to respin.
All of those teams right at the bottom there that I mentioned need to be looking at changes. There's no doubt about it. They get slammed every time they play a top team. What's the point of that, right? Are we trying to do anything this season? Are we trying to just, sneak into the World Championship qualification and that's the entire goal? If these teams want to take it seriously, especially when you've got organizations like Rocker, they're now partnered with G2, they're not going to sit there and accept being one of the worst teams in the league. And sure, just because they took down Ravens with a substitute doesn't make me massively impressed by what they've achieved so far. And even as Taylor here says to Clay, promise I'm not trolling Clay, do you all know the reasons why you aren't winning and are trying to fix them or don't know what's going on? And Clay says, look, of course we know the issues. So look, they know the issues. Are those issues resolvable by not making a roster change? Very unlikely, right? And I think that many of the teams need to think about it right about now. They could wait until the major. The issue is you wait until the major 1 happens. There's a good couple of weeks off before the start of the Major 2 qualifiers. That is the period in which teams will look to make changes. But if you do that then, you are, fighting over not that many top players in challenges. I've mentioned the European Challenger guys, which should be signed, but the reality is it's going to be difficult for that to happen, unfortunately. So you're really looking at the top guys in North American challenges, which is pretty much the FaZe Black team, and then a couple of other options as well. There is the likes of, there's Temp, of course. There's the likes of Gunless, maybe, that people have thrown around as well. If you need a slaying AR to step into the kind of flex role here on Ravens, those are 2 good options. But also you're looking at Brack, and then you've got the rest of that FaZe Black team with a Seam on it and Crimp on it and Exceed on it, all of which could have potential opportunities in the league. But it's not like there's infinite players to choose from. And if you wait until after the major, when you could have, as Ake said, these teams probably need to realize that, especially compared to the top teams in the league, their roster construction has been bad. And if they want to be a serious threat this season, they might need to make big moves. Even a team like Boston, if they go to the major, they crash out top 8 or something, they might think, you know what, we need to upgrade on Capsidal, or we need to upgrade on Priestahh, or something like this. And if that occurs, then they might have to go to challenges as well. So really, if you're Ravens, or if you're some of these other teams, maybe even Thieves included, I think certainly Thieves included, you might want to jump the gun, get ahead of the curve, make the change now, and then you can get, the best guy in challenges, whether that's a Seam, whether that's some of the other guys on FaZe Black. And like, if they do need a slaying AR, which Ravens clearly do in place of GodRx, because he's not performing, it's not even just the numbers, right? Because we always say, oh, the numbers don't tell the whole story. The numbers and his arrow on the minimap tells a lot of the story. Like, this guy plays at a snail's pace. He was lost on the map and he drops no kills. It's like, he's got to go. I don't think there's any other explanation that GodRx, as unfortunate as it is, like, it's just not working. He's got to go. And I don't know who else they'd get in instead, but I just don't see the purpose in riding it out for one more weekend where Ravens, and also you got to remember, Ravens are playing at tough teams. Like, we can just have a look at this real quick. If I look at Ravens' record here, they're 1-4. They've only won a single series. They've only won 3 maps over the entire season, and those were in that one series that they won against Vegas, and they play FaZe and Thieves. So Thieves is definitely winnable, kind of remarkably so, but FaZe is their first game next. I mean, come on. If you go in there with the current roster, good luck. So I don't really see the purpose in Ravens sticking it out as it presently is. I think they should look to make a move literally right now, because I don't see the point. I mean, it's not like this roster is going to magically have a turnaround and all of a sudden they're competing for championships. Like, it's just not going to work. They've got to look at other options, and if you do it now, you jump the gun. If I'm Thieves, I think the same way. If I'm Vegas, I think the same way. Still, if I'm Rocker, sure, you got a good 10 points yesterday, but I still think the same way about potential changes. I also think that Surge need to consider it as well. I mean, this is kind of remarkable, actually, according to COD mod league stats here, the KDs right now in the league. The top 10 players in the league in terms of KD are all on the top 4 teams. Cell, Simp, Pred, Skyz. I mean, we have representation here, at least 2 players, if not 3, from all of those teams. It's actually absurd how even evenly split it is as well. 3 players from OpTic, 3 players from Toronto, 2 from New York, 2 from FaZe. I mean, it's kind of absurd. And the bottom of the league is, again, as you might predict, 3 players from Ravens, 2 from the Rocker, 3 from the Los Angeles Thieves, and then mixed in there is Purge from Vegas, and even Arcetes. If I'm Surge as well, I'm thinking, because I think aBeZy should be the main. I don't like this whole Iliastes thing. I just don't think it's going to work, especially as the season goes on and SMGs usually become more and more prevalent. I just don't see it working. If I'm Surge and I get the option to think about maybe, you know, putting Arcetes to the bench or something and bringing in a guy like aSeam and actually changing around the roles, I would definitely consider it, especially if Surge don't have a good Major 1. But this is why if you're Ravens, you want to jump the gun on that because you don't want Surge or Boston or another, you know, theoretically pretty decent team coming in after the Major and then snapping up the best challenger guys because you didn't make the decision when you wanted to make the decision, right? If you give offers to some of these challenger guys now to go and sign for you, then, you know, they're going to go and play for your team rather than go and play for a theoretically better team that might happen after the Major concludes. I mean, honestly, Thieves are in a very similar spot as well. Like, their numbers are tragic. Like, honestly, we talk about GodRx a lot. He's Burger of the Week or Burger King or whatever, but Cammy isn't far behind. And, I mean, Ghosty and Joe Deceives, that, like, Afro is the best performing player on Thieves, and he's not been great, has he? Like, I know I gas up Afro a lot, but, you know, it's not pretty for that team. So what would you do if you're any of these rosters? I think there's a lot of speculation of a good reason that there's a few guys at the top of challenges either slaying ARs or very impactful, potentially slaying SMG players that these teams need to have a look at, and very quickly indeed, because if they don't, then things are going to only go from bad to worse, and, well, CDL points are pretty important. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.